Usually when we look at a map of the world, we sort of expect to see these clean, solid lines.
Right, borders, state lines, all of them.
Yeah, exactly. Everything neatly compartmentalized. We really like to believe that, a problem in one box just stays in that box.
Oh, for sure. Geography gives us this completely false sense of containment. Like, we rely on that binary idea that you are either in one place experiencing one reality, or you are somewhere else entirely.
But today, we're basically throwing away that physical map. Because when you step into the current state of global affairs, those clean borders are just totally blurred.
They really are. We're looking at a landscape that is fracturing along entirely different lines.
Yeah, we're talking psychological fault lines, economic stress fractures, and as we'll get into later, very literal seismic cracks. So, welcome to today's deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission today is to take a really intense, overlapping news cycle and just distill it down for you. Our primary source today is the June 27, 2026 edition of the Daily Tech Reader.
And it really paints a picture of a world splintering under immense pressure, but also finding these surprising pockets of resilience.
It's wild. It's a fascinating, if, somewhat daunting landscape to navigate.
Very daunting. When you read through today's sources, you are essentially watching overarching systems hit their absolute limits.
Yeah.
We're talking about manufacturing capacities just tapping out, demographic trends reversing, diplomatic tolerances snapping, and even the physical endurance of the Earth itself being pushed way past its baseline.
Which is terrifying, honestly.
Yeah, it is. So today we are going to explore what actually happens when those limits are breached.
And to understand that, I think we need to start at the physical center of the nation's political fracture, which is the National Mall in Washington, D.C.
Right, the site of the America 250 celebration.
Exactly. But if you walk down the mall right now, you aren't seeing one unified Great American State Fair. It looks a lot more like a split-screen television.
Yeah, where both channels are playing completely different documentaries about the exact same country.
Okay, let's unpack this. The physical layout is incredibly revealing, right?
Oh, absolutely. So on one end, you have President Trump's Freedom 250.
Right, and let's describe what that actually looks like. The Freedom 250 features this actual replica of a proposed triumphal arch.
Which is quite the visual.
Totally. And they also have a fleet of what they are calling PragerU Freedom Trucks.
Right, and for anyone who might not know, PragerU is a well-known conservative media organization.
Yeah, so having their branding literally on these trucks means this event is wrapping a very specific ideological education right in standard fairground aesthetics.
Exactly. And because of that overt partisan framing, most Democratic-led states completely declined to participate.
Yeah, they backed out. And they also cited the cost, right? Like a massive $500,000 price tag just to set up a single pavilion.
Right. And, when one half of the political spectrum opts out of a national celebration like that, nature abhors a vacuum. The alternative immediately materializes.
So, running in parallel on the very same mall is the next 250 counter celebration.
Yep, literally sharing the lawn.
Right. And this one kicked off with an indigenous-led opening ceremony. It featured a march starting from Black Lives Matter Plaza, and it's heavily populated with voter registration booths.
It's a completely different vibe.
Night and day. Now, before we go any further, I want to be incredibly clear with you, the listener. In this deep dive, we are absolutely not taking a stance on either of these America 250 celebrations.
No, not at all.
Nor are we endorsing or criticizing any of the political maneuvers or judicial rulings we discussed today. Our goal is strictly to impartially analyze the reality of a dual narrative nation and what that actually means on a structural level.
And that structural level is where the underlying math comes in. Because the ideological divide on the mall is highly visible, but there is this invisible, much more dangerous undercurrent happening simultaneously.
Yeah, the Daily Tech Reader really highlights this, like that disturbing incident from June 26.
Right, with Pete Buttigieg's family. They were subjected to a false Child Protective Services investigation.
Which he described as coordinated political harassment.
Exactly. So you have this atmosphere of intense partisan friction, and it's playing out against a backdrop of severe demographic contraction.
Which brings us to the Supreme Court ruling on temporary protected status.
Right. The Supreme Court just ruled that the administration can end temporary protected status, or TPS, for 350,000 Haitians and 6,000 Syrians.
And for anyone unfamiliar, TPS is a designation that allows people from countries facing, ongoing armed conflict or environmental disasters to live and work legally in the United States.
So revoking this means hundreds of thousands of established residents could abruptly lose that legal ability.
Wow.
Yeah, and if we connect this to the bigger picture, the United States population was already aging and trending toward decline.
Right. That's just a baseline statistical reality at this point.
Exactly. You cannot build a future economy while artificially shrinking the labor pool. When you abruptly remove hundreds of thousands of working-age residents from the workforce, you accelerate that demographic contraction.
So you are effectively taking a shrinking economic engine and just starving it of fuel.
Precisely. The ideological battles we see on the National Mall, combined with these extreme political harassment tactics, create an environment where pragmatic, long-term policymaking regarding our workforce becomes, well, nearly impossible.
And people are clearly feeling that impossibility. The sources point out that Revolutionary War reenactors, specifically those interpreting George Washington, are seeing record crowds right now.
That's such an interesting detail.
Isn't it? Citizens are actively seeking them out to find historical context for this divide. They are looking for a grounding narrative outside the noise of those dual fares.
But domestic instability at this scale never stays contained within our borders. It broadcasts a very clear signal to the rest of the world.
Right. Geopolitical stability relies heavily on perceived domestic unity. And right now, that surface tension is completely broken.
Yeah, when the United States appears internally distracted or fractured, it really emboldens international maneuvering and creates immense anxiety in global markets. We are seeing this play out in real time with Iran.
Okay, let's get into that, because the ceasefire negotiations that were supposed to happen in Switzerland have now been indefinitely postponed.
Right, and this delay directly follows U.S. airstrikes on Iranian drone and missile storage sites.
Furthermore, Vice President Vance actually canceled his planned attendance at those talks amid the fallout from a cargo ship attack in the Strait of Hormuz on Friday.
So the executive branch is engaged in this kinetic back and forth, but the legislative branch is pulling in the completely opposite direction.
Yeah, the Senate just passed a bipartisan war powers measure directing the president to remove U.S. troops from the Iran conflict.
And 4 Republicans actually broke ranks to vote for it.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting, and I kind of have to challenge this a bit. The Senate measure to withdraw troops is explicitly non-binding, right? Like, it carries zero legal authority.
Correct, 0.
So I have to ask, is this just a symbolic slap on the wrist for the history books? Or does a non-binding resolution actually hold enough weight to spook these already fragile global markets?
Oh, absolutely spooks the markets. And honestly, it has nothing to do with legal authority. It comes down to algorithms and signaling.
Okay, how so?
Well, modern financial markets are mostly driven by automated trading systems that constantly scan global news for indicators of volatility. A non-binding resolution signals to the global community that the U.S. government is not unified in its foreign policy posture.
Ah, I see.
Yeah, so when 4 senators from the president's own party cross the aisle during an escalating conflict, trading algorithms interpret that as extreme instability. The markets price in the uncertainty of an unchecked conflict.
And the results are just brutal. I mean, the NASDAQ just closed the week down 6.4%.
Huge drop.
Yeah, and oil prices are swinging wildly, mainly because the Strait of Hormuz, which is this massive bottleneck for global energy, might not remain safely navigable.
Right, oil volatility makes total sense given the geopolitical news.
But oil alone doesn't explain the NASDAQ dropping 6.4%, does it? That points to a much deeper structural tech issue.
Yeah, you're touching on one of the most fascinating supply chain nuances in the modern economy right now. We are in the middle of a massive artificial intelligence boom.
Right. AI is everywhere.
But AI is not just code floating around in the cloud. It requires immense physical hardware. Specifically, it requires high bandwidth memory to process the staggering data sets these AI models train on.
Meaning AI doesn't just need computing power, it needs an incredibly wide pipe to juggle all that information simultaneously.
Precisely. And right now, that wide pipe takes up all the manufacturing space. Chip manufacturers are devoting almost all their fabrication capacity, their fabs, to these AI chips.
So they're basically cannibalizing their other products.
Exactly. They're actively cannibalizing the production lines that normally make standard memory for your everyday laptops, tablets, and phones. The capacity of a silicon fab is a hard physical limit.
You can't just spin up a new factory overnight.
No, you cannot just 3D print more memory. It takes 3 to 5 years and billions of dollars to build a new fabrication plant.
So we have this virtual ambition, this AI data center boom, violently colliding with the physical limit of how much silicon we can actually bake.
Yeah.
And that bottleneck is directly hitting the listener's wallet right now. Apple just announced price hikes for the MacBook and iPad, citing this exact memory chip shortage.
And analysts are warning this crunch will last through at least the first quarter of 2027.
Which is a long time in the tech world. Combine that with the fact that OpenAI just delayed its IPO, which is just further rattling investor sentiment.
It perfectly illustrates how intertwined these systems are. A political fracture delays a ceasefire, which threatens an oil shipping lane, which spooks markets that are already jittery because the physical infrastructure required to build our AI future simply does not exist yet.
It's like dominoes falling. And speaking of physical infrastructure failing, while human systems like politics and supply chains are under immense strain, the physical Earth itself is literally cracking open.
Yes, the human toll in Venezuela right now is staggering.
The country was hit by twin earthquakes, a 7.2 and a 7.5 magnitude. The destruction is just absolute.
The numbers coming out are devastating.
Yeah, the National Assembly confirmed 1,430 dead, and families have reported 68,900 people missing.
And it is day 3 of the rescue effort. We are right at the edge of the 72-hour golden window closing.
And that 72-hour window isn't just a rule of thumb, is it?
No, it is a physiological absolute. After 3 days trapped in rubble, a person without access to water begins to succumb to severe dehydration.
Yeah, that's awful.
Furthermore, you have to factor in crush syndrome. When muscle tissue is compressed for long periods, it breaks down and releases toxins. When the pressure is finally released, those toxins flood the bloodstream and overwhelm the kidneys, causing fatal renal failure.
So the clock is literally ticking on a biological level.
Exactly. Finding survivors alive after this 72-hour window drops off exponentially because the human body simply gives out.
The logistics of the international response are massive, though. The U.S. committed a $150 million aid package. Miami-Dade Fire Rescue deployed Florida Task Force 1.
Which is a highly specialized team.
Right. That's 80 highly trained members and 6 canine teams on the ground right now. But one of the most vital things the U.S. teams are doing isn't even digging, right? They are frantically repairing a key runway at the Simón Bolívar Airport.
What's fascinating here is that heavy machinery, the cranes and excavators needed to move massive concrete slabs, they cannot be flown in on small aircraft.
Right, they're just too heavy.
They require heavy military transport planes, like C-17s. If that runway isn't structurally sound, the machinery just can't land. It is an agonizing infrastructure bottleneck during a literal life-or-death countdown.
But even as we coordinate these highly technical international task forces to save lives abroad, our domestic environmental picture is terrifying in a completely different way.
Yeah, shifting back to the U.S.
Right. In Utah, you have the human-caused cottonwood fire burning through Beaver and Paiute counties. It has exploded to 71,000 acres, and it is 0% contained.
0%.
Yeah. Governor Cox declared a state of emergency and restricted July 4th fireworks statewide. But the detail that really stands out to me: the National Weather Service issued a rare, particularly dangerous situation, or PDS red flag warning.
And it's the first time the Salt Lake City office has ever had to issue one.
Right. What does that actually mean?
What is important to understand about a PDS warning is that it isn't just a dramatic label for a hot day. It requires a specific, lethal meteorological algorithm to be met. It's the atmospheric conditions. So the relative humidity dropping into the single digits, the extreme dryness of the vegetation, which we call fuel moisture, combined with high sustained wind speeds, have aligned perfectly.
So it's basically a powder keg.
Exactly. It means explosive fire growth isn't just a possibility, it is a mathematical certainty if a single spark occurs.
Wow. We hear the phrase wildfire season every year, and honestly, it's easy to just tune it out. You think, oh, it's summer out west, things burn.
Right, it becomes background noise.
Yeah, but nearly 3 million acres have burned nationally so far in 2026, and we haven't even hit July.
It's way ahead of the 10-year average.
Exactly. 9 states from Alaska down to New Mexico are warning utilities about preemptive blackout risks just to prevent their own power lines from creating those sparks.
Because the grid itself is a liability in those conditions.
Right. And down in Texas, Dallas-Fort Worth is locked in a 95 to 97-degree heat wave with literally 0 frontal relief in sight through the entire holiday weekend. This means the baseline is shifting, right? We just can't treat this as business as usual anymore.
You're entirely right. The baseline has moved, and our infrastructure is failing to keep up. The physical systems of the planet are behaving in ways our municipal grids were just never designed to handle.
Like they're just too old.
Yeah, a power grid designed in the 1970s simply cannot withstand the continuous thermal stress of a 2026 heat dome without initiating rolling blackouts to prevent total system failure.
So, if we take a step back and look at the board, well, we have a fractured political system, unable to even share a lawn in Washington, an aging and shrinking workforce, global supply chains constrained by physical silicon limits, the ground violently shaking in South America, and millions of acres burning across the American West.
It is incredibly heavy.
It really is. So what does this all mean for you? Like, how do people actually cope when the grid, the government, and the ground all seem to be failing at once?
Historically, humanity turns to two mechanisms when macro systems fail. We turn to communal escapism and the quiet, steady march of scientific advancement. We basically seek out resilience.
And nothing embodies global communal escapism quite like the World Cup.
Nothing even comes close.
The Daily Tech Reader has Saturday's updates, and you can really see the scale of the human appetite for this. Spain edged out Uruguay 1-0 to advance from Group H Belgium, routed New Zealand 5-1 to top Group G.
But you know, it isn't just about the scores. It's about the sheer logistics of bringing these disparate nations together while the rest of the world feels so deeply divided.
Exactly. You look at the upcoming matches. Colombia versus Portugal in Miami with Ronaldo expected to start.
Oh.
Argentina taking on Jordan at AT&T Stadium in Arlington, though Messi is likely resting.
You have tens of thousands of people navigating airports, booking hotels, and packing these stadiums.
And you also have matchups that are historically unprecedented, like Croatia and Ghana are meeting in Philadelphia. It is the first time those two nations have ever played each other in football.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? Tens of thousands of people packing a stadium to watch a first-ever cultural exchange. It really shows our massive appetite for global connection.
Yeah, and domestically, the U.S. men's national team is providing a very different kind of distraction.
Yeah, Mauricio Pochettino's rebuild of the team has been bumpy, let's say, but players are reportedly all in as they approach the knockout stage against Bosnia-Herzegovina in Santa Clara on July 1st.
And the biggest anxiety for U.S. soccer fans right now isn't politics. It's Christian Pulisic's calf injury.
Right, which is kind of a relief in a weird way.
It is. It provides a localized, healthy anxiety. A calf injury is a problem with a known parameter. It acts as an emotional release valve for the public psyche when everything else just feels uncontrollable.
That makes a lot of sense. But while sports provide that emotional resilience, we are also heavily relying on the scientific community for our physical resilience.
Yes, and there are major new developments in public health. Pharmaceutical companies are advancing a potential Lyme disease vaccine.
Which is huge news for anyone who spends time outdoors, especially with the shifting climate and warmer winters expanding tick habitats across the country.
Absolutely. But the drug makers are hitting a massive roadblock, and surprisingly, it's not biological.
No, it's entirely sociological. The Daily Tech Reader notes that these companies are facing significant headwinds from modern vaccine hesitancy.
This raises an important question, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, on one hand, we have groundbreaking health science capable of preventing a debilitating disease. On the other hand, it is struggling to connect with a deeply skeptical public.
This highlights the great paradox of modern medicine. We have essentially solved the biological puzzle of developing the vaccine. We understand the immunology.
Right. The science works.
But the psychological puzzle, how to communicate efficacy and safety data to a wary public that has fundamentally lost trust in its institutions, that remains completely unsolved.
That's the real bottleneck.
Yes, you can engineer the most effective prophylactic in human history, but if social trust is fractured, the science is rendered functionally useless.
It brings us right back to the very beginning of our conversation today, the fracturing of trust.
Full circle.
Yeah, we started by looking at a split-screen national mall, a nation trying to celebrate its 250th anniversary, but unable to even agree on which fair to attend or which set of facts to believe.
We saw how that ideological divide mirrors a literal demographic decline, accelerated by judicial rulings like the end of TPS.
Right, and we watched how a fractured government posture spills over, spooking global markets through algorithmic trading.
While at the exact same time, our rush to build an AI future is straining the physical limits of global silicon supplies.
We witnessed the golden window closing for earthquake survivors in Venezuela, highlighting the fragility of human life against the shifting baselines of extreme weather.
Weather which is currently forcing blackout warnings across 9 western states.
Yeah, And finally, we found people seeking refuge in the unifying logistical marvel of the World Cup, while science fights to overcome public skepticism to deliver a Lyme disease vaccine.
It truly is a landscape defined by boundaries being broken, both physical and social.
It is. And as we wrap up today's deep dive, I really want to leave you with one final thought to mull over.
Go for it.
Earlier, we talked about those record crowds seeking out George Washington reenactors amidst all the partisan chaos on the National Mall. People are desperately looking for historical grounding.
Yeah, a sense of stability.
Right. But when you look at the real challenges we discussed today, global AI chip shortages caused by invisible data centers, unprecedented weather patterns requiring new meteorological terminology like particularly dangerous situation, and a deep-seated sociological hesitancy toward life-saving vaccines.
None of these problems have any historical precedent in Washington's time.
Exactly. The variables are entirely new. So I just have to wonder, are we flocking to the reenactors of the past simply because the reality of the future is moving too fast for us to comprehend?
That's a profound question.
It's something to think about the next time you look at a map or check a price tag or read the news. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Keep asking questions, keep challenging the baseline, and we'll see you next time.